To the battle-hardened SEALs of Naval Special Warfare, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen was a joke. They mocked her call sign, Cypher, dismissing her as a paper pusher while they kicked down doors. But they were dead wrong. While they cleaned weapons, Sarah was breaking unbreakable enemy encryption and mapping invisible terrorist networks. When a high-stakes extraction in Syria goes sideways, the team finds themselves blind in hostile territory. Suddenly, the only thing standing between them and total failure is the quiet woman with the laptop. This is the gripping story of how one intelligence officer turned a mocking nickname into a legend, proving that on the modern battlefield, the most lethal weapon isn't a rifle. It's the mind that controls the battle space. From wherever you're watching, let us know in the comments. And if this story has earned you respect, click like so others can find it too. The briefing room at Naval Special Warfare Group 2 smelled like stale coffee and boot leather. Metal chairs scraped against concrete as operators filed in, their voices carrying the easy confidence of men who'd seen combat and survived it. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen sat in the back corner, clipboard balanced on her knee, pen moving in steady strokes across the page. She wore the same tan fatigues as everyone else, her hair pulled back in a regulation bun, her posture straight but unremarkable. To the SEALs settling into their seats, she was just another support officer, someone who pushed papers while they kicked doors. The kind of person you forgot 5 minutes after the briefing ended. One operator leaned back in his chair, nudging his teammate with an elbow. He'd spotted the name tape on her uniform. "Chen," he read aloud, then smirked. "Hey, isn't that the one with the call sign?" His buddy chuckled. "Yeah. Cypher. What kind of call sign is that? Sounds like something out of a math class." The first one grinned wider. "Probably got it because she sits in the TOSI counting bullets while we're downrange." Quiet laughter rippled through the nearby seats. Sarah's pen never stopped moving. Her eyes stayed fixed on her notes. She didn't acknowledge them, didn't shift in her chair, didn't offer even the slightest reaction. The silence that surrounded her wasn't submission. It was something else entirely, something they couldn't recognize yet. The door banged open, and the briefing officer strode in. A Master Chief with 3 decades of service etched into the lines of his face. Everyone straightened. The chatter died. Sarah closed her notebook and set it aside, her movements precise and unhurried. The mission brief was routine on paper. A high-value target in Syria, intelligence suggesting a narrow window for extraction, standard insertion via helo with ground support on standby. The Master Chief clicked through satellite imagery, pointed out ingress routes, marked exfil points, standard operating procedure. Then he paused on a slide showing a complex network of tunnels beneath the target building. "Intel says the HVT moves through these subterranean passages to avoid surveillance," the Master Chief said. "Problem is, we don't have current maps. The local network has been modified extensively in the past 6 months." A hand shot up from the third row. "So we're going in blind?" The Master Chief's jaw tightened. "Not exactly. We have support from our intelligence section." He gestured toward the back of the room. "Lieutenant Commander Chen has been analyzing signal intercepts and communications patterns from the region. She'll walk you through what she's found." Every head turned. Sarah stood without fanfare, picked up her notebook, and walked to the front. Her boots made almost no sound on the concrete. She connected a USB drive to the projector and pulled up a different set of images. Detailed schematics, tunnel layouts, entry points marked in red. "These passages weren't modified randomly," she began, her voice calm and even. "The changes follow a specific pattern tied to local construction schedules and material shipments I've been tracking for the past 4 months." She clicked to the next slide. A timeline appeared, showing dates, locations, and shipment manifests. The HVT's network uses a rotation system. Every 7 days, he shifts primary routes to avoid pattern recognition, but the rotation itself is a pattern. One of the operators who'd mocked her earlier leaned forward, squinting at the screen. "How do you know that?" Sarah didn't look at him. She advanced to another slide showing intercepted communications, coded messages broken down into plain text. "I've been decrypting his courier network's traffic. They don't know we're listening because they think their encryption is unbreakable." She paused, her tone unchanged. It was, until 3 weeks ago. The room went still. Operators who'd been slouching sat up straighter. The Master Chief crossed his arms, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Sarah continued, walking them through entry sequences, security rotations, and blind spots in the surveillance network that she'd identified through nothing but signal analysis and pattern recognition. She spoke in the same measured cadence throughout, never raising her voice, never emphasizing her own role. She simply presented facts, but the facts were devastating in their precision. When she finished, she disconnected the drive and returned to her seat without waiting for applause or acknowledgement. The Master Chief cleared his throat. Questions? Silence. Then one of the senior operators, a chief petty officer with more combat deployments than most of them combined, spoke up. Ma'am, how long did it take you to break their encryption? Sarah looked up from her notebook. 14 days. Another operator muttered something under his breath. The chief petty officer nodded slowly, respect dawning in his eyes. 14 days? Alone? Yes. The word hung in the air, simple and final. No boasting, no explanation, just confirmation. The briefing wrapped up shortly after. As operators filed out, their conversations were quieter now, more subdued. The ones who joked about her call sign earlier avoided looking in her direction. But Sarah had already packed her things and left through a side exit, her presence evaporating as quickly as it had materialized. 3 days later, the team deployed. The helos cut through darkness over the Syrian desert, rotors beating steady rhythms against the night. Inside the lead bird, operators checked weapons and ran final gear checks. Sarah sat near the rear, tactical headset on, laptop balanced on her knees. She was the only non-shooter on the Manifest EU, there purely for real-time intelligence support. One of the operators across from her, the same one who'd mocked her call sign in the briefing room, caught her eye. He looked away first. The insertion went clean. Boots hit sand. The team moved in formation toward the target building, night vision turning the world into shades of green. Sarah stayed with the security element at the exfil point, a position that kept her out of direct action, but still within the operational perimeter. Her laptop was already open, satellite uplink established, signal intercepts flowing across her screen in real time. The assault team breached the building. Gunfire crackled through the radio, voices calling out room clears, movement, contact, then silence. The team leader's voice came through, tense and clipped. Cypher, we've got a problem. HVT's not here. Building's empty except for security. Looks like we've been compromised. Sarah's fingers moved across her keyboard, pulling up the most recent intercept data. Her eyes scanned lines of code, timestamps, frequency patterns. Stand by, she said into the radio, her voice as calm as if she were ordering coffee. Seconds passed. The team waited in that empty building, weapons trained on doorways, every nerve wound tight. Sarah's screen filled with new data. She cross-referenced signal locations, traced a communication burst that had occurred 17 minutes before the breach. Her fingers stopped. Team leader, HVT moved 23 minutes ago, she said. He's not in the building. He's in the tunnel network, heading east toward the secondary safe house we identified in the brief. A pause. How do you know that? Sarah pulled up the intercept. His security detail sent a coded message to the safe house confirming his arrival. I just finished decrypting it. She transmitted the coordinates. He's there now, but you have maybe 10 minutes before he moves again. The team leader didn't hesitate. Moving to secondary location, Cypher, guide us in. What happened next would be dissected in after-action reports for months. Sarah, sitting in the dark at an exfil point with nothing but a laptop and a radio, became the team's eyes and ears. She called out patrol routes based on signal traffic. She identified security gaps by tracking mobile phone locations. She redirected the team twice to avoid ambushes she'd detected through communication patterns. Her voice never wavered, never rushed. She spoke with the precision of someone reading coordinates off a map. But what she was really doing was reading the invisible architecture of a hostile network in real time, turning ghosts into geometry. When the assault team finally breached the safe house, the HVT was exactly where Sarah said he'd be, sitting in a basement room with 2 guards who surrendered without firing a shot. The team leader's voice came through the radio, breathless but controlled. Jackpot. HVT secured. Cypher, your intel was perfect. We're moving to Exfil. Sarah closed her laptop. Copy that. Well done. The helos lifted off 30 minutes later, the HVT and flex cuffs, the mission a clean success. As the bird climbed into the night sky, the operator who'd mocked her in the briefing room leaned across the cargo bay. He had to shout over the rotor noise. "Ma'am, that was incredible. Seriously." Sarah looked at him. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She just held his gaze for a moment, then returned her attention to the window, watching the desert disappear below. Back at base, the debrief was supposed to be routine. Mission success, HVT in custody, no casualties. But when the team leader stood up to present his report, he did something unusual. He started not with the breach or the capture, but with Sarah. "Before we go further, I need to make something clear," he said, his voice carrying weight that silenced the room. "This mission succeeded because of Lieutenant Commander Chen, not just because she provided good intel, because she provided perfect intel, in real time, under pressure, while we were downrange." He looked around the room, making eye contact with each operator. "Some of you don't know what cipher means. I'm going to tell you." The room leaned in. Sarah sat in the back, her expression neutral, her hands folded in her lap. 6 years ago, Chen was assigned to a joint task force hunting a bomb maker in Iraq. The man had killed more than 200 coalition forces with IEDs. He was a ghost. No one could find him. The team leader's voice dropped lower. Chen spent 8 months building a pattern analysis of every attack, every device, every piece of intelligence we had. She didn't just decrypt his communications. She learned to think like him. She predicted his next target with 72 hours' notice. Silence settled over the room like snow. We set up an ambush, captured him without firing a shot, saved hundreds of lives. The task force commander wanted to give her a medal, but she refused. Said she was just doing her job. So instead, they gave her a call sign, Cipher, because she didn't just break codes. She broke the enemy's mind. The team leader turned to look directly at Sarah. "That call sign isn't a joke. It's a warning." Several operators shifted in their seats. The ones who'd laughed at her in the briefing room looked down at their hands. The Master Chief, sitting in the front row, stood and turned to face the room. "Chen has been with this command for 6 months, he said. In that time, she's provided intelligence for 11 successful operations. 0 compromises, 0 friendly casualties on missions where she provided support." He let that sink in. She doesn't carry a rifle, she doesn't kick doors, but she's saved more lives than most of us ever will. The Master Chief walked to where Sarah sat and extended his hand. She stood, met his grip with quiet firmness. "On behalf of this command, thank you for your service, Lieutenant Commander. We're honored to have you with us." For the first time since the briefing began, Sarah's expression changed. Not into a smile, but into something subtler. Acknowledgement. Acceptance. She nodded once. "Thank you, Master Chief." The room erupted into applause. Not the polite clapping of ceremony, but the genuine respect of warriors who understood what she'd done and what she continued to do. Sarah stood there, hands at her sides, accepting it with the same quiet dignity she'd shown since the day she'd arrived. When the applause finally faded, she sat back down, opened her notebook, and returned to work. Because that's what professionals did. They didn't bask in recognition. They moved on to the next mission. But from that day forward, everything changed. When Sarah walked through the corridors of the command building, operators nodded in respect. When she entered the operations center, conversations paused and commanders asked for her assessment. Her call sign was no longer a punchline whispered behind her back. It became something else, a mark of credibility, a signal of lethality, the quiet kind that didn't need to announce itself. Weeks later, during another mission brief, a new operator raised his hand during her presentation. "Hey ma'am, question about your analysis." Before he could finish, one of the senior chiefs cut him off. "Let her finish first. If Cipher says it, you can bet your life on it." The operator nodded and lowered his hand. Sarah continued her brief, without missing a beat. But in that moment, the room understood something fundamental. Call signs are earned, not given. And some call signs carry the weight of lives saved, of enemies defeated, of silent wars fought in encrypted channels and satellite signals. Cypher wasn't a joke. It never had been. It was a promise. And Sarah Chen delivered on that promise every single time. Months passed. Operations continued. The tempo never slowed. Sarah remained the same steady presence in every mission. Her voice on the radio a constant source of accurate, timely intelligence. But there was one operation that would cement her legend permanently. The mission brief came down on a Wednesday evening. A high-risk extraction of a downed pilot in enemy territory, deep in hostile terrain with multiple armed groups converging on the crash site. The window for rescue was less than 4 hours. After that, the pilot would either be captured or killed. The operations officer laid out the challenge. But we have approximate coordinates from the pilot's emergency beacon, but the signal is intermittent. The terrain is mountainous, heavily forested, with limited visibility. Enemy forces are moving toward the area from 3 directions. He pointed at the map. We need to get there first, locate the pilot, and extract before we're overwhelmed. One of the team leaders spoke up. What's our intel picture? The operations officer hesitated. Limited. Satellite coverage is intermittent due to weather. UAV support is unavailable. We're going in with minimal eyes. A heavy silence fell over the room. Minimal eyes on a time-sensitive extraction meant maximum risk. The Master Chief looked toward the back of the room. Chen, what can you give us? Sarah stood and moved to the front, her laptop already under her arm. She connected it to the projector and pulled up a different kind of map. Not satellite imagery, but a layered analysis of communication patterns, signal intercepts, and predictive modeling. The pilot's emergency beacon is intermittent, but it's still broadcasting, she said. I've been triangulating the signal against known enemy communication nodes. Based on movement patterns and radio chatter I've intercepted in the past 2 hours, I can narrow the search area to a 3-kilometer radius. She zoomed in on the map. A red circle appeared, much smaller than the original search area. The enemy forces are converging from these vectors. 3 arrows appeared on screen, moving toward the pilot's location. But they're moving slowly because they don't have precise coordinates. They're searching blind. We have an advantage if we move now. An operator raised his hand. What about extraction routes? Sarah had already prepared the answer. She overlaid terrain analysis with enemy patrol patterns, creating a narrow corridor through the mountains. This route here. She traced a line with her cursor. It's the only path that avoids enemy concentrations and provides adequate cover for helo extraction. But the window closes in 3 hours and 40 minutes. After that, enemy forces will have the area locked down. The team leader studied the map. That's tight. It is, Sarah agreed. But it's the only option that doesn't end in a firefight we can't win. The Master Chief looked around the room. Gear up. We're wheels up in 20 minutes. Chen, you're coming with us. Sarah nodded. Yes, Master Chief. This time, when she boarded the helo, the operators made room for her near the front, close to the team leader. They didn't question her presence. They wanted her there. The flight into the mountains was rough, the bird bucking through turbulence as it hugged the terrain. Sarah's laptop was open, satellite uplink struggling to maintain connection through the weather. But she worked through it, her fingers steady on the keyboard even as the helo shook around her. 15 minutes from the landing zone, her screen filled with new data. Team leader, enemy patrol just changed direction, she said into the radio. They're moving faster than predicted. ETA to pilot's location is now 90 minutes to, not 2 hours. The team leader's voice came back tense. Can we still make it? Sarah ran the numbers. If we land here instead, she transmitted new coordinates. We cut 15 minutes off our approach, but the terrain is worse, steeper, rockier. A brief pause. Then the team leader spoke to the pilots. Change of plans. New LZ coordinates incoming. The helo banked hard, descending toward a rocky outcropping barely large enough to be called a landing zone. The team fast-roped down into darkness, boots hitting loose stone and dirt. Sarah was the last one down, her laptop secured in a tactical pack, radio headset in place. The team moved out immediately, pushing through dense forest, climbing steep slopes. Sarah stayed in the middle of the formation, protected but present. She continued monitoring signals, calling out updates as enemy forces adjusted their search patterns. 20 minutes into the patrol, the team stopped. The forest had grown too thick, visibility too limited. They were close to the pilot's last known position, but finding one person in this terrain would take time they didn't have. The team leader looked at Sarah. "Can you narrow it down further?" She pulled out her laptop, balancing it on a fallen log. Her screen showed the intermittent beacon signals, each one a brief ping of data. She analyzed the timing, the signal strength, the direction. Then she overlaid the terrain map. "The pilot is moving," she said. "Not much, but enough to show direction. Based on the signal pattern, I think they're heading downhill, trying to reach lower ground." She pointed through the trees. "Southwest, maybe 800 meters. The team leader didn't question it. "Move." They found the pilot 20 minutes later, exactly where Sarah had predicted. The aviator was injured, dehydrated, but alive. The team medic went to work immediately while security set up a perimeter. Sarah kept her eyes on her screen, tracking enemy movements. "We need to move now," she said. "Enemy patrol just cleared the ridge to our north. They'll be on top of us in 40 minutes. The team leader keyed his radio. "Exfil Bird, we have the package. Moving to extraction point now." The trek back was brutal. They were carrying an injured pilot through hostile terrain with enemy forces closing in from multiple directions. Every minute mattered. Every decision critical. Sarah called out route adjustments based on real-time intelligence, steering them away from patrols she detected through signal intercepts. Twice, she redirected them around ambush points they would have walked straight into. When they finally reached the extraction point, the helo was already inbound, rotors beating against the mountain air. The team loaded the pilot first, then security elements, then Sarah. As the bird lifted off, small arms fire crackled from the tree line below. Rounds pinged off the fuselage, but the helo climbed fast, banking hard to avoid the worst of it. Inside the bird, the team leader pulled off his helmet and looked at Sarah. She was closing her laptop, secure it in her pack, her expression as calm as if she'd just finished a routine briefing. He had to shout over the rotor noise. "You just saved that pilot's life." Sarah met his eyes. We all did. But everyone in that helo knew the truth. Without her analysis, without her real-time intelligence, without her ability to read invisible patterns in hostile territory, that pilot would have died. The enemy would have found him first. The rescue would have failed. The debrief back at base was different this time. The commander of Naval Special Warfare Group 2 attended personally, along with several senior officers. When the team leader finished his report, the commander stood. "I've read the after-action summary," he said. "I've reviewed the intelligence logs. I've listened to the radio recordings. And I need to say something that should have been said a long time ago." He walked to where Sarah sat and stopped directly in front of her. "Lieutenant Commander Chen, in my 30 years of service, I have never witnessed intelligence work of this caliber. What you did out there wasn't just analysis, it was art. You saw patterns no one else could see. You made predictions that saved lives. You turned chaos into clarity." He extended his hand. "You are exactly the kind of professional this community needs." "Thank you." Sarah stood and shook his hand. "Thank you, sir. Just doing my job." The commander smiled, a genuine expression of respect. "I know. That's what makes it even more impressive." From that day forward, Sarah Chen became something rare in the special operations community, a legend who was still active, still working, still saving lives. Operators who deployed on missions specifically requested her support. Commanders sought her analysis before approving operations. Her name appeared in classified reports with a frequency that made her one of the most valuable intelligence officers in the entire Navy. But she never changed. She still sat in the back of briefing rooms with her notebook and pen. She still spoke in the same measured, calm voice. She still refused to take credit, always redirecting praise to the team she supported. And her call sign, Cypher, became something whispered with reverence. New operators joining the command were pulled aside by senior chiefs and given a single piece of advice. "If Cypher is on your op, you listen to every word she says. Your life might depend on it." The jokes stopped. The mockery disappeared. In its place grew something far more valuable: trust, respect, recognition. Not the loud, performative kind that demanded attention, but the quiet, earned kind that settled into the foundation of the community and stayed there. Years later, when Sarah finally retired, her farewell ceremony was attended by hundreds of operators, many of whom had served on missions she'd supported. One by one, they approached her, shaking her hand, thanking her, sharing stories of how her intelligence had kept them alive. She listened to each one with the same quiet dignity she'd always shown. No speeches, no grand gestures, just acknowledgement and gratitude. As the ceremony ended and the crowd dispersed, one young lieutenant approached her. He just arrived at the command and had never worked with her directly. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" Sarah nodded. "Go ahead." "Your call sign, Cypher. How did you earn it?" Sarah looked at him for a moment, then gave the smallest smile. "By doing the work, every day, without exception. The call sign just made it easier for people to remember." She turned to leave, then paused. "Focus on the work, Lieutenant, not the recognition. The work is what matters." And with that, she walked out, leaving behind a legacy that would be told in quiet rooms and classified briefings for decades to come. Cypher wasn't just a call sign. It was a standard, a reminder that true strength doesn't announce itself. It simply delivers every single time.